Before I begin with this video, I would like to state a few things. These stories are from good friends of mine and even friends from school and other random people who had their parents working as a 911 operator or knew people who did work in 911 operating system. The point of this video is to educate you on and to show you some of the hardest things had that a lot of 911 operators have to go through. Now, I would like to ask is if you please be respectful in the comments section, as these jobs aren't really easy and they basically have certain tragic stories. Some of these are short, while others are a bit longer. If you have a weak stomach, this may not be the video for you. Viewer discretion as advised. This 911 story came from a perspective of one of the famous ones, not really famous ones like, well, celebrities, but one of them that my friends used to live in Florida at the time. One of my friends' names was Selena, and her mother's name was Catherine. Catherine worked for the 911 operating system when they were living in Florida from 2002 to 2014. In 2005, this 911 call that Catherine responded to took place during the time where Hurricane Katrina hit Florida. It was a really large and destructive storm, and there were a lot of fatalities at the time of this story. However, somewhere in Florida, to be completely fair, it was a very messed up time. Now, to be completely fair, most of Florida did not get hit, but of course other countries did. Now, at the time of this story, Catherine was working her job in Louisiana as a 911 operator. Now, during this time, they lived in Florida for about a few years, but they went to live in Louisiana for their 2-year contract. Now, in Louisiana, Hurricane Katrina really affected a lot of countries, not just the Caribbean, but in places in the US as well. Now, Catherine responded to a call from a woman saying that she was stuck on the highway and there was water everywhere. Catherine had people to send help, but of course this woman was also disabled. He did what Catherine told her to. But however, though, the water started to become very high, and unfortunately the car was swept away and the call was abruptly disconnected. That one really sticks to Catherine to this day, and will forever change the way she thinks of the summer hurricanes. So this took place sometime in 2012, and it took place in a very most popular and the biggest mall in Toronto, Ontario. The Eden Centre was a really big mall, probably one of the most biggest malls in Canada. However, there was a shooting that took place sometime in June of 2012. It took place shortly after my grade 8 grad trip there. It took place sometime either on the weekend or probably on the Friday. Now, I won't name the person who was the shooter as for privacy reasons, but a 911 operator had responded to a call in the Eden Center Mall when someone said that someone came in the mall with a gun. There was shooting as well as people screaming and running away. There were a couple of people that were dead upon arrival at the hospital, even dead before EMTs could get there, and there was even certain deaths that happened. This person who responded to the 911 call was from a man who was working at the food court. He honestly was crying on the phone, saying how scared he was. Eventually, the police arrived and they took the man away, but no shooting has ever happened since then. How I knew about this 911 call was because one that I know that was a friend of mine from freshman year of high school worked at the Eden Center back for 5 years before that incident, and he was the one who called 911 as he was enjoying his day at work when that happened, and it honestly scares him to this day. The 911 operator obviously cannot get that call image out of its head, and this honestly still frightens and terrifies many people to this day. This took place maybe in 2016, and this happened to one of my good friend's teachers, who was a teacher at my elementary school. He said that he had someone worked for 911 operating system, and this call honestly saddens him to this day. The 911 operator named Mike used to take 911 calls pretty much a lot and would send any emergency that they requested. However, he's been doing that for at least 4 to 5 years, and in 2016, it was during the summer when this happened. Now, this was over somewhere in Michigan, so Mike did work in Michigan for quite a while. As a 911 operator, Mike had responded to a girl who was no older than 6, saying that she was kidnapped by at least a group of men and she was taken to this abandoned house. Mike tried to calm the girl down as much as he could, but unfortunately she was too much scared to even think about calming down. She even gave the 911 operator as much information as she could. However, she stated that she can't remember the address, but it was in an old abandoned house in the countryside. It was a white house with a balcony and etc., with some grass growing around it. As Mike was sending police over to investigate the area, the girl started whimpering, saying that she was gonna die. Mike honestly cannot disconnect the call, no matter how upsetting it was, so he stayed with her as much as he could until there was a loud gunshot bang on the other side, as well as some screaming and yelling from a group of men, followed by the girl screaming before the call hung up. Now, this was a reason why Mike quit 911 after that call, as calls with kids really upset him, but that was the last straw. He would never forget this call, and still to this day, he still gets nightmares while thinking about this call. Hey, so this took place with one of my friends and I. We were not living too far from my house, but this was on the hometown where I grew up in. My friend ended up having to call 911 and talk to the operator that day, and this honestly still shakens the operator. It's not really the upsetting type of story, because you'll find out later, but it's definitely something that really stuck with a lot of 911 operators. So, me and my friend, we were walking down the street when all of a sudden we see a car trying to attempt to go across the road in a busy street. As the car was getting, halfway there, another car slams its brakes and causes a car collision. A few cars also crashed, but the others stopped, thankfully. The one car that was trying to go across ended up getting damaged, but of course, this prompted my friend to call 911. The 911 operator tried to get them to explain where the location of it was and what happened. We ended up staying around that area and waited for the police and even some EMTs. The EMTs eventually did show up, and they eventually took the person in. Luckily, the people who were involved in that accident, they lived. However, though, they ended up suing the person who was going too fast. But yet again, the reason why that car accident happened was that the guy who was driving the car hit the one other car was drinking. Eventually he was arrested, and then he was soon sentenced for at least a few years in prison. As soon as that car accident really hit the 911 operator, we were very, very glad that no one died in the accident. Only people got injured, but that's just besides the point. That 911 operator was a very calm and collective person, and they were honestly very glad that we called 911, as most of the time most people wouldn't really do it unless it involves a car on fire or something like that. This honestly really made us feel glad we called 911, but at the same time though, I still feel bad for the people who got their car damaged and even got injured during that car accident. That one really put a lot of people on edge for at least a little while. But this one honestly stands out the most. Now, this took place somewhere in the US, probably in Nevada or maybe Georgia. I don't remember what city this took place in, but it did take place in either state. Now, one of my good friends who moved to the US about a year or two ago, and his name was Aiden, and he became a 911 operator. Aiden was 27, and he is turning 28 as of now. This story he ended up believing that this 911 call was honestly the most terrifying thing he's ever witnessed. Most of the calls he responded to were involving kids. Those ones really stuck to him. Aiden picked up a 911 operating phone call to a man saying, not really a man, but a kid. He was most likely 13 or 14. He said that someone was trying to break into his house. Aiden was on the phone trying to calm the boy down and state certain questions like, where is he in the room, if he's in his bedroom to lock it, and that to stay as quiet as he could until the 911 cops showed up. Of course, the boy answered the questions, though Aiden could hear certain sounds going on. One of them being glass shattering along with men walking in. Now, the boy honestly had his phone, a cordless phone, and he honestly was saying that the men just broke in the house. The police were on their way, but seeing that the nearest police station was about 15 minutes away, it was taken by the fact that this boy lived somewhere in the countryside. While Aiden was calming the boy down in any way possible and telling him to calm down and that everything will be okay. But as of this, he started freaking out, saying that he's going to get found and that someone was going to arrest him and anything like that. This honestly really put Aiden on edge and told the young boy that everything was going to be okay and that he needed to listen. He did so, and after about maybe a few minutes, it was over. The police arrived and arrested the men, and that was the reason why Aiden doesn't really respond to 911 calls with younger people very much anymore, because this one honestly put him on edge. He was thankful that the boy did not die when the men came in and broke into his house, but why would they want to break in his house was a question. Another one being, how did they even get the keys or something? Those questions still run through Aiden's head to this very day. Something like this had happened again with the same guy at least a week or two later, but this time it was from his dad because someone had eventually came back and trashed their house, stole the jewelry from his wife. Eventually, Aiden ended up having to figure out that there was a group of guys who somehow formed a cult and was breaking into people's houses for apparently no reason. Luckily, all the men were caught and they were sentenced to prison for a long time. These 911 calls that Aiden also experienced were very much putting him more on edge than he ever expected it to be.